Welcome to episode 238 of the Fabulously Keto Podcast. Before we get into this week's episode, I want to take a moment to thank Fiona Jozinski, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Fiona, for her very generous donation to support the podcast. It's through kind contributions like Fiona's and yours that I'm able to continue creating and sharing these episodes with you. Currently every other week, but hopefully we'll get back to weekly soon. So thank you. This week's guest is Susie Boshoff. I came across Susie through Doug Reynolds and Pam Devine. And I was excited to hear more from Susie after she spoke about allulose and how it can naturally stimulate GLP-1, a topic that really piqued my interest and is very topical at the moment. Our conversation goes much deeper than that, touching on some surprising truths about food ingredients, metabolic health, and what it really takes to heal a struggling body. Since we recorded, Susie has rebranded her Scrummy Sweets to Switch Sweets. The new brand is very different and the transformation looks great. At the moment, the switch to switch hasn't fully taken place, but it should all change over soon. I won't say switch again. Here's Susie's bio. Susie Boshoff, founder of Switch Sweets, formerly Scrummy Sweets, a brand that focuses on blood sugar support and truly keto family favorites, reinvented without the BS, bad stuff. Obsessed with non-toxic healthier living, metabolic health, and clean living in an often dirty world. Clean, keto-friendly ingredients sleuth turned commercial food maker. Let's go and hear from Susie. Welcome, Susie, to the Fabulously Keto Podcast. It's fabulous to have you with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited that you're here. So we always start with, where in the world are you?
So I'm in Tampa Bay, Florida, in Clearwater, sunny, beautiful Clearwater. And yeah, Florida.
So I was telling you off air that we went there. It was the last holiday I had with my dad. It was such a wonderful holiday. We were in Clearwater, on Clearwater Beach. It was so brilliant, but that was a long time ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want you to start with your journey and how you came to find keto. Tell us a bit about that.
So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I actually had exposure to keto a couple of different times. So, and then I was fascinated by it kind of newly. So in 2011, I was a vegan, a whole food plant-based vegan. I'd watched like Forks Over Knives and all of these different documentaries, and I was not well. And I really just wanted to fix my body, and it seemed like it had all the answers. So I went vegan, probably, I'm going to say maybe 2000, I'm going to say 7, something like that. So I was vegan for about 3 years, and something really rough was happening with my body. Despite how clean I was eating and how compliant I was, my memory was going and my balance was going, and there was a whole bunch of things that were wrong. My blood work looked okay, except that weirdly, a whole bunch of my minerals and nutrition were super low. I understand all of that now, did not understand it then. And I ended up going to see Dr. Michael Clapper. He's in the Forks Over Knives video, and he's like a pretty famous MD in the plant-based space. And he was at a place called True North, where they do medically supervised water-only fasting and other more natural modalities to help you. And I got there and I was just in so much systemic pain and I was having so many problems, and he checked me out. He gave me a diagnosis, and then he told me that he wanted me to do a water fast. So I did the water fast. It was 40 days in 2 20-day increments. It was kind of rough on me, but it was also amazing. And I understood, because they have an education library. So I was reading about, oh, how can you go that long without water? And that was when I first learned genuinely about the state of ketosis, how the body switches and no longer relies on, glucose to run, and how it'll run off of your own fat. And it was fascinating because the idea with a water fast, an extended water fast, is that first, any irregular aberrated fat cells, things like that, those will get digested first, and then your visceral fat, and then your excess body fat. And your body is using fat for fuel. So
I'm just going to
my
interrupt you a sec because you said, how can the body go 20 days without water? But I think you meant without food, did you?
right, without food. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So you were having water.
Go without food. How can you actually go without that sustainability? Because you have to realize this was like 2010, 2011. And people, I couldn't even tell my family what I was doing. I didn't go there thinking he was going to water fast me. He diagnosed me with a loose connective tissue disease, which is actually a fatty disorder. And he was like, this is, for him, it was research. He was like, I want to see if this helps you. And it would be amazing. And they were documenting everything and all of that. And it did help me. It was also super, super brutal. I'm not going to lie. I understand why now from a biological standpoint, but the end result, my mental clarity, I mean, I had moments and memories that were completely gone that were fully restored. And it was very life altering. And I tried to talk about that. I was like, well, it just seems like this ketosis thing is where it's at. And they were like, no, 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 you're just healing your body. That's not a legitimate thing, that part of it, except for the healing aspect of it. And I was like, okay,
Yeah. How
you
does that
know?
make sense? Yeah.
So that was how it started. And then I came home, went back to my whole food plant-based diet. I was in so much pain and I was still in really rough shape. My vitamins, my minerals were not amazing, which didn't make sense to me because I was having like these massive spinach smoothies and almond milk and all the good plant-based stuff. What I didn't realize was that my oxalate toxicity was probably out the roof,
Yeah.
and the chelation that was occurring where my vitamins and minerals weren't absorbing. I even asked my doctor directly. I was like, okay, I don't understand. I am having this huge green smoothie in the morning. Never mind the fact that I was spiking my blood sugar. We're not even talking about that part of it.
Yeah.
And having these huge salads full of organic spinach and all organic ingredients. And it seems like the more I'm doing this, the worse I feel. And he was like, oh, the reason you're not getting enough minerals is, are you chewing your smoothie? And I was like, what? And he was like, you need to get those digestive enzymes
Sorry.
flowing. It starts digesting in your mouth. He's not wrong, but also that's not why. So I started chewing my smoothies and I still just felt like crap, to be honest with you. And it was a pretty rough thing to go from feeling like I was somewhat healed to feeling like I no longer was. So anyway, I found out I had lipedema with secondary lymphedema. Because he had diagnosed me with a rare condition related to lipedema, it at least put me on the right path. And I do have that. It's called Derkim's disease, and it is a fatty disorder where your body starts developing these very painful fatty tumors, and it's pretty rough. And I had my own theories, like as I was losing weight, that my fat was releasing toxins throughout my body. I know now that that was accurate. The science still had to catch up. So anyway, it led me to the world's leading authority on Derkim's disease at the time. And she saw me, and yes, maybe Derkim's disease, but she was like, you have lipedema, like 100%. And I was like, what is that? And then that started me on the journey of understanding that there was a classification for what I had. Because women with lipedema, I don't know if you're familiar with it, there's actually quite an active community in the UK. And I'm very immersed in the lipedema community. I'm on a
And
round table every month
I
with a whole
see
bunch of patients.
I see people
Yeah,
and I think, yeah, you've got lipedema. And
100%.
I did once go up to someone and say, I think you've got this, look into it. But it's not
Yeah.
something you can really say. But I have a friend and I'm sure she has it. And I've sent her loads of info from Catherine Seo and
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I don't think she looked into it. But you can see she's quite slim, but her hips are massive, her thighs are massive. I mean, I've got
Yeah.
fat thighs, but it's not that same shape.
No, it presents in a few different ways, and we're so clever at hiding it for the most part. And we kind of grow up looking curvy, and we're typically, and not everybody is this, but typically on the obese side, no matter what we do. Like we could be the fittest people in the world, and our thighs and our legs still look kind of funky to us. And that can be super rough. So yeah, getting a diagnosis was great. And then I joined this lipedema group on Facebook, and it was the first time I ever saw women with legs like mine. I literally was like, we're so good at hiding our legs that most people, aside from the obviousness, depending on how much it's expressed, of being curvy, the the way our legs present, we're in a much better environment now, I think, where it's the body positivity has probably helped considerably.
Yeah,
But no, we can hide ourselves so good.
yeah.
So, and
And
it's an information driven condition,
and the thing is, it
which,
often leads to lots of pain and and inability to walk and all things like that. So if you don't know about it and you don't do anything about it, and not that it's easy to do anything about, you can quite
yeah,
often end up in a wheelchair.
I was very close to that when I went to Germany and had lipedema removal surgery. And that's where I became a vegetarian, because it was really hard to be 100% plant-based in Germany, we found, for like traveling and stuff. And yeah, but I was probably, I would say 5 months away from being in a wheelchair by the time we got to Germany. And the surgeries helped for sure. They weren't doing them here in America. You couldn't find a lipedema specific surgeon. In fact, Catherine Seo was with us in Germany at that time, filming a documentary related to lipedema. And there were all these experts that were coming to learn how to do this innovative surgery to help women with lipedema. And it did give me back my life for a period of time. But if you don't handle the root cause of what's driving lipedema, you're at risk. And then when I hit perimenopause, the pain came back. All of the problems that I'm going through were coming back. And my memory was super rough. And that's what led me to deep dive into everything related to the ketogenic diet. And I was kind of astounded as I was doing more research on Alzheimer's and things like that. I told a story when I was interviewed by Dr. Boz, and it's just so telling, where I had a moment, this was a few years ago, where I climbed into my car to drive it, and it's a stick shift. And I learned how to drive cars on a stick shift. I owned my own personal little cute stick shift for a million years. Most Americans don't really drive them. We jokingly say they're a perfect anti-theft device. But I climbed into it one morning, and I was staring at the pedals, and I was like, I could not remember why there were three pedals and what I was supposed to do with them. And it was very frightening for me. I just told my husband, listen, I don't want to drive it because, my legs feel heavy and it's just a lot of work. So I really just want to drive the automatic. And he's like, okay. But then we had a moment where I couldn't hide what was happening with my memory. And we ended up in a really huge fight where he thought I was being just very difficult. And I thought he was being difficult because I didn't even remember an earlier conversation that took place. So, and it was weird. Like it was one of the worst fights we ever had. And that was when I sat down and was like, okay, I have to tell you something. This is what's happening with my memory. And he was just, wow, okay, you know. And I told him, I said, listen, I'm going to give you a free pass if you want to, if I don't know if I can manage this, and it's going to be hard for you to handle me, because he's kind of an impatient guy. And I was like, I'm giving you a free pass. If you don't want to stay with me, that's okay. You can you can go. And he looked at me and he's like, oh, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to handle this. Like, we're just going to sort it out. I'm like, okay, I've been secretly watching these, like, I was like attending these, like, a whole bunch of stuff that David Perlmutter had done and all these people, and they were talking about having a ketogenic adapted brain and like how it was so neuroprotective and all these different research on Alzheimer's. And I was like, have to fix me.
So, oh God, you got me crying now. I just fixed it up and now I'm crying. How old were you at that point?
I was just 50. Like, it wasn't that hugely long ago, genuinely. I mean, I was already keto, but not right. So this is what leads me to more of this, right?
Yeah.
So I knew that a ketogenic diet was critical for my brain health. Like, I didn't have any question about that, but I was having a hard time finding that place of clarity because I wasn't well physically, legitimately. And I also didn't know I had Lyme yet. I only found out I have Lyme in November of 2022. A doctor that I went to was like, I'm going to test you for Lyme. And I was like, I don't have Lyme. I'm not an outdoorsy person. I'm a creative. I'm an artist. And he was like, okay, but we're just going to test you anyway. And every marker came back positive. And there's one particular marker where he was like, you've probably had this for at least a decade, as far as I can tell, because these white blood cells were super low that Lyme is notorious for going after. And I was like, oh, wow. So we were doing a whole bunch of different modalities to fix that, but I'd had like adrenal fatigue, so I couldn't do intermittent fasting. So there were aspects of keto that when I tried to do them were very rough. And then the oxalate dumping. This is how I learned how massive my oxalate overload had been from years of, I mean, everything that's high in oxalate, I was consuming in volume.
Yeah.
And no wonder I felt terrible. So it was kind of like this journey, and I couldn't go, so I couldn't go carnivore either, because when I went carnivore, the oxalate dumping was so intense that I would just it would just knock me out. So I was constantly like, what is going on with my cells? What is happening? How can I fix this? And it led me to a really weird ingredient. I, um, how do I explain this? So I knew that every time I started losing weight and my body was really resistant to giving up the weight. And I've been morbidly obese most of my adult life.
Yep.
And every time the weight starts to come off, I would feel pretty rough and it would get really, really intense. So as we move forward learning about lipedema, one of the things about lipedema, and it's kind of understood in our community that it's somewhat protective, meaning that the body has gone, oh, there's a toxin. Let me wrap that in fat and let me store it over here to protect you because we don't want that circulating in the bloodstream.
That's exactly what
And
happened.
then over time, that fat becomes, because it's got so much garbage in it, it starts to distort, which damages your lymphatic system. So now that you have no systemic cleaning system to deal with those toxins, except for wrap it in fat, store it. In the early stages of lipedema is the moderate distortion of what your body looks like. The next stage is the feeling if you rub here, you can see my CGM here, but if you rub like the back of your arm or your legs, they start to feel like little grains of rice. And then as that progresses, it'll feel like a bag of beans, like the texture's not right. And then eventually they become very hard nodules that you absolutely can't mistake. And the body will continue to distort itself. This is a protection mechanism. Weirdly, most women with lipedema, generally speaking, we have a lower incidence of diabetes and other diseases that are commonly associated with being morbidly obese, despite the fact that we are distinctly morbidly obese, right?
Yeah, you're storing it away.
Yeah, exactly. So then you do lymphatic massage and you do all these different things. And we're always dieting and trying to lose weight, but the body is super resistant to let go of that weight. I believe that it's very resistant to let go of that weight specifically because it's a protection mechanism.
Not safe. Yeah.
Because if you don't know what you're doing and those toxins are released, that is terrible. I mean, I was throwing up when I was doing the water fast. It was brutal on me. Anytime I started losing weight, I would just feel rough. I would get migraine headaches and I would get all this other nausea and intense stuff going on. And I would go into ketosis when I did it properly, very good, but I felt really rough. So I was like, okay, I have to shift gears. And the Lyme helped me because one, I work with a naturopath and she tested me and was like, you have a parasite situation and it's rough. And here's the thing about parasites. Like if you're a gardener and you love to garden and you have these beautiful plants that you're growing, when they get a parasite on them, if they are not healthy and robust, it'll consume them very quickly. So I had a pretty rough situation and it was causing this like triggered intense anxiety. And I didn't want to go to a doctor and go, I'm experiencing this intense anxiety. I don't want to be put on drugs. That's not my vibe. I want to find the healthy root cause of it and fix it.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing this extended parasite cleanse. And then I found out later that Lyme, when a person is diagnosed with long Lyme, obviously, if you find out you have Lyme right after you got bit by a tick, do the antibiotics. The course of antibiotics, 9 out of 10 times, will just handle it. But if you've had Lyme for 20 years, no, these little suckers, they are hiding and they're sneaky. And the things that will trigger the worst things that you see of Lyme are parasites, first and foremost, mold, absolutely. And then lastly, heavy metals. So you have to detox each of those, which leads me to Ben Azadi and why I love him so much. And he's one of my favorite people in the keto space because he was the first guy that I stumbled on that was really talking about getting the cells under control. Like this starts very baseline. And he was talking about the overload of these different things. So I was like, okay, if I have an overburdened body that has so many toxins, how can I safely handle that?
Yeah, you've got to do
And
it in a safe way. And
totally,
Ben is a functional diagnostic nutrition therapist as well, so he
yeah,
can
exactly.
understand all of that and test and stuff. Yeah.
Well, and I discovered him when his YouTube channel was super small because I was actually, my background is a blogger on sustainable, non-toxic living. I have a blog called 365 Days of Awesome.com, and that's where I talk about all kinds of things related to toxins and things. I haven't been active in the last 5 years, I'm going to be honest with you, since I started my company, because it's taken up all my time. But I have a whole content plan because there's demand for it and people want to know. That's how I met Ben, was through this, like, we were both in the same YouTube course and we became friends because I already had a natural affinity for the keto space. And I loved what he was talking about. And then the more time we got to know each other, I was like, oh, yeah, no, you're my go-to guru in this arena. But I discovered that losing weight, so one, the ketogenic diet, hands down, was the best way for my body to start regulating and lose the weight, but it had to be done right. And then two, I had to solve how to safely lose weight.
Yeah.
So that led me really, really weirdly to soluble fiber. So, and I have a whole article about this with some of the science behind it. And here's why. So when you put something in your body, anything, to eat, your liver is going to produce bile. It's going to store it in your gallbladder if you have one, and then it's going to release it to help break down that food, make it absorbable. And one of the other things that people don't pay a lot of attention to is that bile scoops up any toxins. It actually helps women who have too much estrogen circulating in their system. Like it can actually clean up the metabolic waste as well as any toxins that your body has. So if you're losing weight and you're releasing all these toxins, and for somebody like me with a broken lymphatic system, I'm screwed. Like as soon as that fat starts to give up those toxins, my body's like, help, help, help. I have no way to get this out. So I came across this woman named Karen Hurd. I don't agree with the diet that she forwards because I don't believe a plant-based diet's correct. And she created a thing called the Bean Protocol. But her story is what captivated me. So she has a lot of children. Her husband's a preacher, and she's great. When her kids were very little, they lived in a little place where they had had this carpet treated for pests. And it was supposed to be non-toxic pest control. And her little 18-month-old was spending a lot of time on the floor playing because she's 18 months old.
Yeah.
That's where her face mostly is, so close, right? Well, she started having grand mal seizures and a whole bunch of other things. So Karen started obviously taking her to and from the hospital, trying to find out what was going on. They found out she was going into liver failure. And this little, sweet little girl had just gone from being perfectly healthy and vibrant to actually life or death. And at one point, the medical doctors were like, she's not going to make it. And she was like, no. And she had a background in the military where she had worked, and I don't remember all the details, but she was familiar with neurotoxins. And she felt that her daughter was poisoned with some kind of neurotoxin. So they actually went through that and they found out that it was organa, organocell, yes, pesticides, right? Like, and that her 18-month-old daughter had such systemic toxicity that every part of her system that would normally detox a poison like that was in overdrive and failing. So rather than give up on her daughter, she went to medical libraries and researched, and she found a very simple solution, which she immediately started administering, and the seizure stopped almost immediately. And then over the next 6 months, her daughter was healing. And now her daughter's fully grown and has a regular life. This is 30 something years later. And it was soluble fiber because anytime you eat a meal, your body releases the bile. If you don't have soluble fiber, listen, if you're metabolically healthy and you're doing carnivore and you're doing great, cheers. If you, however, have all kinds of really rough stuff stored in your body and the body's trying to give up the weight, there's a possibility that your pathways, detox wise, are going to need some help. And this is where soluble fiber can help. So just 5 grams of soluble fiber with a meal, what that does is it binds to all of that bile and forces it out with your next bowel movement. If you don't have soluble fiber with that meal, your system will clean that bile. The bile cleans whatever's there, and 90% of it gets reabsorbed back into the liver, recirculated.
So I've used soluble fiber recently and a few years ago, but I put it in a teaspoon in some water just before bed. So I'm actually going to be better off doing it with a meal.
Absolutely. You should absolutely. And so you only need 5 grams of soluble fiber with a meal or at the end of the meal, either way, and it'll bind to whatever that bile is scooping up. And it's not that it makes you poop, it's that the next time you go, that bile is trapped. It's not recirculating and it's not getting reabsorbed.
Yeah.
So to me, this was a fantastic solution, which leads me to my weird journey of like how I really ended up here, right?
Yeah.
So once I cracked that, I was like, this is amazing. I need to get soluble fiber in my diet. So mostly you can either buy it as a supplement for sure. I don't know what that is. I don't know what's in it.
The potato starch is one.
Yeah, but if you're hardcore keto and you're really trying to fix your metabolism, for me, I wanted to be at a moderate on the edge of therapeutic ketosis. That's where I ride, and my body loves it, and like across the boards. And it helps me fire on all cylinders. My inflammation markers are the lowest that they've been in years. All of those things. And then the weight just started falling off once my body healed. And I didn't change anything.
Yeah, I think potato starch is different to just eating potatoes. So, for example, if you boil some potatoes and you leave them in the fridge overnight and then you eat them the next day,
Yeah.
There's a very
for
different
sure.
response than if you just have them cooked on the same day. So I think the potato starch doesn't have such an effect as potatoes would.
But I
But
think the
but I
potato
get what you're
starch,
saying. Yeah.
but the potato starch, if I'm not mistaken, is actually an insoluble fiber versus the soluble fiber. You have two types of fiber. You have the one that provides the roughage, right, which will break down and grab everything and help with the bowel movement. And then you have soluble fiber, which is the main food that it's in, where you can get at least 5 grams with a meal, is an entire can of beans as far as food goes.
What?
I'm still deep diving into
Oh,
that,
okay. Yeah, go on.
but it led me to my product. So here's what happened. Yeah, I have a loose connective tissue disease. I have at the time these mental impediments that I knew being at a therapeutic level of ketosis was going to be critical. And I'm still a person living a normal life. So for me, I started making gummy bears, and this was probably, I'm going to say 2016, 2017. My husband and I were doing a lot of travel. We were semi-retired. And I would make gummy bears when we were back home. Like some people bake, I was making gummy bears. And then during COVID, obviously I was making a lot of gummy bears. So it was my own personal internal challenge to make like the best version. And anyway, one day they were good enough that my husband was like, we should bring them to market. But one of the things that I put in it was soluble fiber. So I had soluble fiber, I had gelatin, mine are not plant-based, and only 1 gram net carb and like a whole handful of them, which I don't eat. So I eat like probably a half of a handful of gummies, and it has allulose, which has, 7 grams of allulose, which is the recommended amount minimal to actually stimulate GLP-1, to actually stabilize blood sugar, all of those things. And it has more than 5 grams of soluble fiber. So my body just kind of loved it. And I was like, wow, I'm supplementing without supplementing. I'm so cheating right now.
Okay. So there's a couple of things there. So what was the soluble fiber that you were using in the gummies then?
So originally I wanted to use soluble tapioca fiber. However, at the time when we launched our product in the beginning, I started finding out as we were reformulating our product to be produced on a huge gummy line and to go commercial. Totally different from what you can do. You cannot do this in your kitchen. There's no way you can make that many bags. It's impossible. And what I didn't know is that gummies are made, like gummy candy is made on huge equipment, like several million dollars in, you know, 50,000 square foot manufacturing facilities, blah, 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 right? And because we came up with a formula that was 100% metabolically stable, like zero blood sugar spike whatsoever, didn't impact my ketones, didn't kick me out of ketosis or reduce my ketogenic state, and had all the good stuff in it, whatever you were buying in your household to try to make that with, you can't actually take to a manufacturer. You've got to find your own ingredients, right?
Yeah.
So at the time, I was actually using originally IMO, which is isomalto oligosaccharide, which was a tapioca fiber. Turns out, not only is it not a fiber, it actually spikes your blood sugar just like straight sugar or straight glucose.
Right.
And it's a pretty rough ingredient, but at the time it was just starting to come out. So now I had this formula that I was trying to bring to market, and now I had to research deep dive into what to replace it with. So I loved tapioca fiber itself. However, because of the confusion in the ingredient space, we had to go with a different fiber, and we went with a soluble corn fiber, obviously non-GMO, project verified, not from China. Like I had all these like criteria,
Yeah.
and I tested it myself because I'm sensitive to corn, but it didn't affect me at all. And it still stabilized my blood sugar, which I love. And it ticked all the boxes. So that was kind of the beginning of my journey where I was learning about actual ingredients and why it can be so murky and somewhat complicated. And then, of course, we added when we wanted to do natural flavors, it's a food, right? So it's a candy, and there's no other way around it. You either add fruit extract, and now you're adding carbs and sugar.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. I wanted a product that anybody could eat, no matter how intense they were on a ketogenic diet. So then that led us to organic natural flavors. And then I found out that, and I was like, I already knew about natural flavors because I'm kind of an ingredient, like hardcore person. So I was like, okay, well, it can't have this and it can't have this and it can't have that. No maltodextrin, nothing that's going to unstabilize your blood sugar. I don't want polysorbate 80 in it. I don't want this in it. So we had a strict no list. And then we found out that like some of the flavors, they all require a carrier. Sometimes it's maltodextrin if it's a powder. Sometimes it's something like seed oils. And I was like, I don't eat seed oils. My whole thing is zero inflammation. Like, what can I do to reduce that? So we had them replace it with organic MCT oil from coconut. And they were absolutely willing to do that. And then we had to move on to colors, and colors were a nightmare. Even natural colors, they can have sugar, maltodextrin, all these other things. And if it's just the natural color, they can use some pretty chemically toxic ways of extracting that. So that led us again to organic natural colors, even though everybody was like, no one's doing that in candy. That's insane.
Yeah.
So
So, I mean, what's quite interesting is from what you're saying and not explicitly you're sort of implying is that the food industry is using some pretty toxic and not favorable to our health stuff that we don't even necessarily know. So we'll look at the food label and we'll think
yeah,
that's okay. But there's this other stuff in there that they don't have to talk about.
100%. You are absolutely nailed it, Jackie. And I didn't realize how dirty until we did this. I'll give you one example. I've told this story before, but I'm going to share it because your audience might be surprised. So when we did our very first run of our gummy bears, we found a manufacturer. They were a traditional regular candy company because no one would touch our formula, and it's totally 100% ours that we created, right? They were like, we don't want to do that because gummies, you've got stuff moving through thin lines, and they were like, it's sticky, it's messy, where no one wanted to touch us. And then there was a company that was willing to take a chance, and they're a traditional candy company that actually just makes candy all day, every day, right? So we go there, we do our trial run with our gummy bears, and up until that moment, we literally didn't know if we could even produce our recipe on big equipment. But we were able to, but they had this foamy white back on them, which is pretty unappetizing, first of all, and secondly, didn't look like my kitchen version. So I asked their plant manager, I was like, I want to understand this. Like, what is this white film on the back of my gummy bears? And she's like, oh, that's just from, when they stir the product and whatnot. It's not a big deal. We have a little anti-foaming agent. We put a couple of drops in there and it'll clear it right up and they'll be beautiful. And I was like, no, you're not putting an anti-foaming agent in my formula. And she's, no, it's okay. It doesn't have to go on your label. It's considered part of manufacturing. So this was my first like, oh, you sneaky bastards. Like that was how I felt, right? And I was like, you think I'm mad and I don't want it on my label? And I'm like, I don't want to eat it. And I'm not giving it to my grandchildren or my kids or my friends. And they were like, oh. So my husband actually had to go into the kitchen, to their huge commercial kitchen, and he was like, show me how you're doing the stirring and the process. Okay, I need you to change it to this, this, and this. And they were like, but all of that's going to take longer. And I was like, don't care. You're not putting that in my product.
Yeah.
So we were able to, fight it, but like the shenanigans on all these different points is very real. If you trust a company, like even the most honorable brand, if they've never made a product that's going to then sell into retail before, they have to find a manufacturer. And in our industry, it's a co-manufacturing partner or a co-packer, and they're the people that make your product. Usually you have a recipe with your ingredients and you go to them and you go, here's my recipe. Or you go, I have an idea for a protein bar or a, protein shake or whatever. And you tell them whatever it is. And if they have their own in-house formulator, which 99.9% of the time they do, they will come up with a product that you like and they will package it for you and make it and everything. They source all the ingredients themselves and they pass all of that on to you. But we were a totally weird, didn't fit because we had very specific ingredients that we had already vetted, like within an inch of our lives. So when we went in, we were like, this is our own formula. These are the only ingredients you're allowed to buy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that that wasn't normal. I just thought, like, if you're going to bring your product to market, surely you have to be responsible for the whole thing. But turns out that's very unusual and it's not the way it's usually done. Or you bring your recipe and then you let them source whatever ingredients match your recipe. So soluble tapioca fiber in 2020 was a very messy arena. Even now, we still have to be very, very specific. We have to give the exact code that is our exact product number of our exact product. Otherwise, so check this out. Soluble tapioca fiber, which is what's in our gummy bears, right? We were able to eventually, as the industry cleaned up, we were able to move to that, which was I wanted to. But did you know, so soluble tapioca fiber can have as much as 8 grams of sugar in it, depending on how they processed it.
Yeah.
Ours does not. Ours is 100% ketogenic, 100% blood sugar stable, matches all of the science behind a soluble fiber. But just because soluble tapioca fiber is on the label doesn't mean that it's the same product that's in my gummy bears as in this keto product. So it is absolutely a landmine. It's challenging. I mean, what's happening with the artificial colors is pretty exciting here in America. I cannot tell you how delighted I am for that to be happening. It's super, super important. I mean, our food industry has been allowing our population to be massively poisoned for a very long time. And then the people that benefit, of course, are the pharmaceuticals. And even trying to eat clean is like, ah, don't step on that, kind of a thing. So, yeah.
It's a challenge. And the thing is that we sort of trust brands, all sorts of brands. We trust that they're going to sell us something that's healthy and it's not going to harm us. But actually, they're just looking at the bottom line. What's the profit in this? We need to make a profit for our shareholders. And whatever's the cheapest thing that will get the most sales and the more addicted you are to it, then
That's right.
better. And they do not care how ill we are. And most of them work hand in hand with the pharmaceutical companies so that when you're sick, you're now on drugs.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so great. It's this beautiful circular ecosystem of evil,
Yeah,
but it's like it is making money for a certain segment.
it's
But
a
I think,
brilliant business model, but it's not a health model.
well, I think that at the end of the day, if somebody is following a ketogenic diet, if somebody is following a very low carb diet, I think one of the most important tools that you can add to your tool belt, which for me was a game changer in even sourcing our ingredients, is to wear a continuous glucose monitor. You can get them in so many different ways so easily. I mean, they've even been more readily available for you than they have been for us.
Yeah. We didn't
Until recently.
Yeah, we didn't need a
And
prescription.
yeah, and they're not expensive. So you can get one, you can pop it on, you have an app, you can actually see, okay, is that keto chocolate square keto? Or did it just spike my blood sugar 30 points? That's not keto. Um, and I think it's very important from the viewpoint of optimizing your metabolism so you can lose weight and so that you can be in optimum health. I don't think people think about cellular health as much as they should in the keto and low carb space. And I want to say this, I personally keep my blood sugar under 100. That's my target always. Like I have zero interest in going above that. The human body, so you have a body, I have a body. You have about 4.5 to 5 liters of blood circulating in your body, depending on how tall you are and how big you are, maybe more, maybe less. So that blood flow is never designed, even today, to have more than 4 grams of sugar at any time circulating in it. 4 grams of sugar for regular people is 1 teaspoon. That is 1 teaspoon of sugar. So when you buy that keto snack that has 6 grams of sugar in it and or 6 grams of carbs and it's less than 20, all carbs are not equal. What is it doing to your blood sugar?
Yeah.
Because if you're not keeping your blood sugar down, and I personally eat super high fat, I love red meat, and that's like my favorite go-to. I also love eggs, and I snack on butter all day, every day. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, me
Really.
too.
It's so delicious. I mean, come on.
So here's the thing with me. The constant glucose monitors are
Yeah,
made by pharmaceutical companies.
yeah,
So distrusting of them. So
yeah,
distrusting is like, what am I injecting into my body when I put the constant glucose monitor on?
yeah.
And what are they, all the data they're keeping about me? So I am so paranoid about all of this that
I don't blame you.
I don't
Yeah.
want a CGM on all the time. I don't want them tracking me, and I don't want them
No,
knowing what I'm doing, and I don't know what they're putting in my body.
I agree. I will say this though. I believe that no matter who you are, for 30, 60, 90 days. So, I mean, obviously, it's this little, barely bigger than a hair filament, and all it's doing is measuring the blood. And of course, it
What
can
I
get more
see.
nefarious
That's
than
right.
that.
Yeah, that's my
Of
concern.
course.
Yeah.
But I think in the grand scheme of things, the data that it provides, I mean, I even have fit, beautiful friends that were going through different battles and they just have good genes, but they also eat pretty clean. But like as they're getting older, I'm 54. My circle is like mid 50s, 60s. Like that's my close circle,
Yeah.
65, that kind of thing. As we're getting older, we're all facing various challenges. So most of my friends, even when they're totally not keto and they don't have weight problems, have gone through the hacking their life with a CGM. And here's what they find out. They find out like how much stress impacts their blood sugar. They find out what happens when they're snacking every 2 hours for their body. They find out that certain patterns of how they eat or even certain foods that they're eating, there is a consequence when they eat that they never associated. And they're like, this is amazing. You know, every time I have blah, my blood sugar is at like 140 in the morning because I just had 2 bagels. And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Bagels will spike my blood sugar. Wow, massive. So
absolutely.
I have had them, and I do recommend them for my clients to have
Yeah.
to do it for maybe not 6 continuous weeks, but to
Yeah.
ideally do it before they start, and then
Yeah.
midway through, and then towards the end, and see what the difference is. But yeah, I don't think I'd want to wear one all the time. I mean, you seem to be wearing one all the time, but I don't want to wear it.
I know. I go, so I toggle on and off. Right now, we're doing some research for our sour gummies, and we're doing I'm always trying to innovate with better ingredients, but I gotta know what's happening. So I test
Oh yeah.
every product that I eat if I'm introducing something new. Like when I'm on my routine, there's no point in having a CGM
Yeah,
because
something
literally my blood sugar's riding at, between 70 during the day, it'll ride between 70 and 80 all day. It literally looks like, are you even alive? Are you
yeah,
even eating? Because
yeah,
I'm not eating something that's going to raise my blood sugar,
yeah, mine's like that.
Yeah, and nobody needs it. You don't
I'm
need
just
to.
gonna look up what that is. So
Yeah.
70.
Oh, so you can translate it. I know, I realize
So
I'm using
in
it.
UK, probably Australia as well. So 76 is 4.2, and let me find an 85 is 4.7, so maybe 4.6 or something. Yeah, 4.
Yeah,
4.5 is 81. So
yeah.
yeah.
So that's kind of where my blood sugar rides. Every once in a while, I will try something like I'll get a wild hair in my, and
Yeah.
I'll be like, ooh, you know what? I want to test. So there's all this research coming out about allulose, how it can reduce blood sugar spike. What happens when you take, this ingredient and then you match it with this much allulose? Does it actually neutralize it? Does it actually reduce its blood sugar? So I'll do crazy stuff like that intentionally. But I'm always trying to keep my blood sugar low. And even with the resistant starch stuff, I was like, how can I make truly keto sushi? So I'm wearing my CGM. I have a recipe that we're going to try, like to make sushi rice, where you cook it and then you cool it for 24 hours. But instead of sugar, adding allulose and then a little bit of the rice wine vinegar and see if I can actually make sushi rice that's actually keto. Because let's be honest, cauliflower rice in sushi is weird and it's not. And I personally, I don't, I don't eat the weird stuff. Like if it has a super weird texture or a super weird taste, I'm like, it's not worth it. And obviously, I'm not going to blow my ketones by cheating. So I want to have a product that's like delicious, but also feels like I'm having that and don't make it an everyday thing. But the thing with the CGM, I just feel when somebody's starting this journey and they're not sure and I have friends that are like, you look amazing. I'm going keto. And then I go to their house and I'm like, what is on? They're like, keto bread, keto this, keto that. I'm like, no, 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 no. This
Yeah.
is not the way to do keto.
Most people
So
don't get it. A lot of people.
no,
But
well, and they're so trusting. And I was trusting. I was very trusting when I started. I was like, if it says keto, obviously it's keto. And then I was like, wait, these people are lying? I was so offended.
and
Like
not
it was,
not only that, they say less than 3 grams of carbs. Okay,
mm,
so and then you turn over and it's got this sugar and that sugar, and then how much can you have? Oh, you can only have one tiny little one of them because that's the weight for what it says.
right,
So you have
of
to be
course.
really careful. So one of the other
No,
things that you just mentioned and was really I perked up when I heard you with Pam and Doug
yeah,
was so at the moment there's this whole craze for Ozempic and Monjaro and Wegovy, and people are losing weight. And I even had a conversation with someone the other day who said, "Oh yeah, my wife's on the drugs and she's doing really well and she's lost 2 stone." And I tried to explain some of the stuff, and he's like, "I don't care, I don't care." And I just thought, I sent him the link to a podcast that we've done recently with Graham Phillips about all the drugs. And it's not that he was against them, he was just saying how you have to be careful with them. And
yeah,
I just thought, she's a sick lady, and now she's
yeah,
going to get sicker, I think, in my opinion. But um, when I spoke with Graham, he was talking about the drugs in a way that seemed quite appealing because he was saying
yeah.
if you really do it at moderate doses, then
Mhm.
there could be a place for it. And I've got to a level of weight where I just do not shift below that, and I'm still overweight. And then someone in my membership group said, I'm really that the sound of these Ozempics sounds really appealing. And then I heard you and I said, you need to listen to this podcast because you were saying how allulose mimics or stimulates the GLP-1. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, there's some amazing studies. And not only that, there's physicians that are using allulose to help people that had to come off of these GLP-1 agonists, right? So the difference is when you're taking a product like Ozempic or Wegovy or whatever, when you're having that dose, it is constantly circulating in your body. I personally think the human body isn't designed to have a constant circulation of GLP-1, but GLP-1, your glucagon-like peptide 1, is a natural process that your body produces when it's more metabolically healthy. It reduces inflammation. It makes you feel satisfied. It makes you less hungry. It curbs cravings. I mean, there's so much beauty that it does. So yes, we do need GLP-1, and you can get it from foods. So I was fascinated because probably 6 months ago, I believe that a body has to heal before it'll let go of the weight. And I probably talked about that also when I was talking to Doug and Pam. I will say that once my body was mostly healed, something switched because I didn't really change my diet except for making sure that my carbs never, or that my blood sugar never goes up over 100, which was the what, 4.8 or something, right?
Yeah, 4.100. Sorry, 100
Yeah.
is 5.6.
Okay, good. So always keeping it even post meal under that threshold. And the reason for that, just really quick, is because as soon as it goes above that within the human body, your body has to produce insulin to protect it. So as soon as it starts producing insulin, you have glucose circulating in your bloodstream. As soon as you have glucose circulating in your bloodstream, glucose has to be you have to protect it. So then it attracts water. Water drives inflammation. So you end up with every glucose molecule having thousands of little water molecules attached to it, which is why people lose a lot of weight when they first go keto, because they're shedding all those excess water molecules and inflammation. So it's not a bad thing, but if you don't maintain that, you're immediately going to bring on the inflammation. And for me, as somebody with lipedema, my ankles would swell to the point where I couldn't even wear shoes. The edema was intense. But when I eat this way, I don't have any edema, even in the summer in Florida. It doesn't matter. It's not a thing. So back to the GLP-1. Okay, now that we understand our biology, GLP-1 helps with absolutely everything. It helps the body to start giving up the weight. It helps the body to, it starts to reduce actual fatty liver. The research is incredible. So I have a friend, a very, very close friend, who was doing the semaglutides, the GLP-1 agonist injections. And she did lose some weight, and there were some descriptions of stuff that she was explaining. She has had this a little bit of nausea, but she didn't care because the weight was coming off.
Mm-hmm.
And she was losing, and this was like post-baby weight, right? But what she was describing, she was like, it's so weird. Like, I don't think about food anymore. I don't really have any attention on food. When I eat until I'm just full, and I don't ever feel like overeating, even when it's my favorite food at a restaurant where I would absolutely just walk out of there stuffed.
Yeah.
And so she's describing all these things. And then probably like 6 months ago, I said to my husband, I was like, I wonder if allulose has GLP-1 in it. Like still, and I hadn't seen the research yet because that was exactly what occurred to me. Like the weight just started falling off. I didn't want to overeat. I didn't think about food. I didn't have cravings. OMAD, not a problem. I typically eat 2 meals a day and I have an eating window. I just do that to keep myself balanced. And then sometimes I'll only have 1 meal, but I don't do that every single day. That's just me.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was easy. And I was like, what is happening? Because I mean, it's something I've dreamt of my entire life. I'm like, I feel like if you get it right, there's a key that'll turn on and suddenly your body will do what it's supposed to do. Because it's ridiculous to do every kind of diet that you can possibly imagine and be like so hardcore. And at the end of it, have lost, barely a stone or, barely 6 pounds. And then at the and your friends are all like skinnier and you're like, what is happening? Why is it so hard for me?
Yeah.
So the GLP-1 and then we found out about the studies. So you only need literally like 5 to 7 grams. There is a per body weight thing, but like, and you can dive deeper into it, but like all of our products, 2 of our caramels is an adequate dose of allulose. And it's funny because the way I eat my products, I don't sit down and binge on gummy bears or caramels or pancake syrup. I just don't. But I do eat them every day. So here's what I do because I want the soluble fiber, which is in both our caramels and in our gummy bears. I will have a couple of caramels in the morning after breakfast with my morning coffee because seriously, it's delicious. And that gives me the soluble fiber and the allulose I need. And then in the afternoon, when I eat my second meal, I might have a bag of gummy bears, or maybe I don't have my second, I only have my second and my third meal. So no matter how that, I mean, my second, lunch, and then sometimes I miss breakfast completely because I just forget. But either way, with any meals, I'm having that. And then sometimes I'll just take a swig of my pancake syrup before bed, which is also like, a teaspoon of that's like, I think that's 11 grams of allulose. So either way, I am getting that daily dose and and the inflammation. So in the lipedema world, there's a study that was just done, and I really wish that I'd memorized the name, but there's another product and it's it starts with a T, that's also the GLP-1 agonist. And a lot of women in the lipedema space are taking it. And there's a lot of studies that show that it reduces inflammation and it does this and it does that and it does all these other things. Here's my take on it. I've seen people microdose it where they're going through a pharmacy to get the assistance on that. I don't think you need as much as people are taking.
Yeah.
I think that's super important for one.
That's exactly what Graham said. So Graham's a pharmacist, and
Ah,
he's talking
that's
about
amazing.
microdosing, really hardly anything compared to what the manufacturers are recommending.
Well, that's why I think that the dosage of allulose that I've been consuming has worked. And it's so funny because we're kind of reclusive because we have this business and we're doing our thing. And recently I've been out and about a lot in my community, seeing, restaurants and things like that, where I see friends and at church, and they're like, you lost so much weight. I'm like, okay, first of all, I didn't know I was fat enough to create this reaction. And they're like, and one of my friends, she was like, no, it's your face. She was like, your face looks different. And I was going back through old photos and the inflammation's real. You change everything when you calm that down.
Yeah.
And GLP-1 will calm that down. Now, I don't think that it should be ingested. I don't think it should be injected unless you're doing microdosing and you really know what you're doing, because I do think the inflammation reduction is real. But in addition to that, I think that with allulose, it's a great way to get your body to naturally produce it. And I think that if you start that journey, it starts to stimulate it, and then the body does it more naturally. Because there's other foods too. Blueberries can help stimulate GLP-1, so can red meat, believe it or not. But a body that's super metabolically broken, it's just not making GLP-1 without some help. And Dr. Bickman, if you haven't been following him, Dr. Ben Bickman, he has some really amazing, very sciencey, nerdy, which is what I love, about allulose and about GLP-1 and the actual, like, what is happening metabolically, because his world is insulin, right?
Yeah.
Because it really is a root of so many things. Also, fun fact, some people in the carnivore space find or experience that their uric acid levels aren't coming down. And high uric acid levels can lead to gout and a lot of other fairly debilitating situations. But when they supplement with allulose, their uric acid just drops And the reason for that is because allulose as a molecule is so close to fructose almost identical, except that in the health space, they're calling fructose allulose's evil twin. Because fructose, which is processed in the liver, for people that don't know, it's processed in the liver. It's not glucose. It doesn't get stored in the muscles and fat. It's a totally different process. Unfortunately, fructose, especially in abundance, there's a pathway that actually drives cancer growth called the GLUT5 pathway. And that pathway loves fructose as its favorite form of food, and it'll drive cancer growth. There's studies that are showing that when somebody consumes allulose and no fructose, that it was actually slowing cancer growth.
Wow.
It actually is blowing my mind because it hijacks the same pathways, but the body seems to like allulose better than fructose. So where you have the same pathway going, this is what the science is loosely indicating. Obviously, I can't say 100%, but there's so many studies. It's such an exciting arena.
So with all the sweeteners, they have to go through a process to get them in a form that we would eat, a manufacturing process. How is the allulose process? Is that quite clean?
I wouldn't say that it's quite clean or not clean. It isn't any dirtier than sugar. I'm going to be honest with you. So like if you're looking for good, great, best kind of a thing in terms of the metabolic aspect of it, a lot of the allulose, I will say this about it. So a lot of the allulose on the market comes from corn. Not all of it. Some of it actually is processed from wheat, and some of it can even come from beet and even sugarcane. So what they do is they take the fructose molecule, for lack of a better way to talk about it, and then they do an enzymatic process which converts it to allulose. Because allulose as a sugar, it's actually a rare natural sugar that is found naturally in maple syrup, or figs, raisins, various other places, and it's present. Like you have fructose that's in it, you have some glucose that's in it, you have all these different sugars that are in these various things naturally, and that's how that's extracted. So allulose is naturally occurring, and they've just figured out how to speed up that process. The only place you can get organic allulose is from China. So we don't buy our organic allulose because I genuinely don't trust it.
Yeah.
Buy a non-GMO project verified allulose that's from other countries. Sometimes we can get it from Germany. Sometimes that's hard. Sometimes we get it from South Korea. But I'm very intentional about that. And then it's third-party validated with additional tests. You would not think that you need to do this, but you do. I think some people, I am also concerned because I'll see people that have more of a digestive reaction to allulose. So one, you should start slow because everybody's body is different. Like some people can eat erythritol all day long in their ketogenic journey. I never could. And I definitely cannot. Like it is just so intense for me. So, and I don't use xylitol ever because it can be deadly to dogs. And we've always had dogs in our household. So we don't now because our oldest dog passed away a couple years ago, but from being very old. But we actually lost a dog because when we were in England, the person who was watching our house, our dog got a hold of some Pilu gum, which is xylitol, and she was gone within 24 hours.
Oh,
and it was heartbreaking to me. So I just don't, even though it's a keto option. And the other thing is again, buying the ingredients, man. There's two different kinds of resources that xylitol can be made from. And I found that when I bought it from, I think it's the birch tree that comes from China, I got the really upset stomach. But when I bought the one that was domestic, I didn't get an upset stomach. And back then, I wasn't in the food business, but I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah. So I
I
found
think
I'm not a addictive person, but
yeah,
I found when I was using many years ago xylitol in ice cream, I
yeah.
wanted that ice cream every day. Every day I was thinking, no, you're not going to have it today. But I was in the freezer and I could not stop eating it. And I'm sure it was the xylitol because there was nothing else in the ice cream because I made it myself. I just stopped it. I just thought I cannot make ice cream because I don't want this where I'm having it every day.
No. And the other thing about allulose, which blows my mind, doesn't trigger the cravings. It just doesn't. It's not I don't find myself obsessing over it. I don't find myself thinking about it. I don't, I use it as a practical support in my regular daily life, and it's great. And it's simple. And I mean, there's even some researchers are using it to help with drug addiction and alcoholism because whatever the GLP-1 that's stimulated, it isn't just a food thing. It's like all of that noise for some kind of craving for something that's out of balance, and it seems to quiet that noise.
Yeah.
So I just think it's the cat's pajamas. You know.
So, Susie, is there anything that you wanted to talk about today that we haven't spoken about?
I feel like I think we've managed to hit all of the boxes. Oh, the only thing I was going to say is just from a simplicity standpoint, I believe that being keto adapted, where you're mostly a fat burner and not a sugar burner, is the most beautiful thing that you can do for your body long term. I really do. I think understanding the science behind that and what it's doing at a cellular level, there's never been a more important time to understand that. But that being said, the dirty keto end of things might serve somebody who has a lot of weight to lose in the beginning, but there'll come a point where it won't. And then understanding the ingredients that you're putting in your body becomes important. I think at that time, when you're doing that final tweaking, testing to make sure that whatever you're putting in your mouth genuinely isn't impacting your blood sugar or impacting your ketones. I personally test my ketones and my blood sugar, and I keep a ratio, and I make sure that, and while I do a little bit of flexibility on that, for the most part, I want to ride on a semi close to therapeutic level. But I also had a systemic situation that I'm trying to heal, and I'm trying to, I have a plan. It's thoughtful. So I just feel like for anybody who isn't losing weight on keto or feels inflamed, if you're eating seed oils are super toxic and highly inflammatory. They just are, and they're in everything. You have to read the ingredients and make sure that you're not consuming them.
Yeah.
And that's hard. And I get it.
How often do you test your ketones and what sort of times a day?
I usually test it in the morning, and it'll be before I put anything in my mouth, because that way I know what my fasting glucose is and my ketones, because my ketones are always higher later in the day for sure. And so if as we get towards the end of the day, because I'm snacking on butter all day, I really don't eat for many, many, many hours. So my ketones might be at like 2.0, 2.2, 2.7. It just depends. Right now, my ketones are super low, but I also had my grandson yesterday. And the sad thing is he likes fruit, and he likes these. I buy clean crackers, but I tried really keeping only my foods, and he's not into it. He's like, Oma, I don't want to eat that. I'm like, ugh, okay, my little sugar burner. He's only 3. So
And so
anyway, and then
when you say snack on butter, are you just
Mhm.
do you do like I do and just have a spoonful of butter with some salt on or something? How do you snack on
I
butter?
mean, yes. So I buy pasture-raised organic salted butter personally, because I don't have luck when I try to salt it myself. And I buy it in the size that's like, looks like a little brick. And then I'll slice off the end of the brick lengthwise, and then I'll eat it. And it's not uncommon for me to walk into my living room and my husband's like, "Ooh, is that cheese?" And I'm like, "Nope."
It's butter.
And I eat it like a candy bar, like
Yeah.
legit. And then the other way I eat it is I put it, so I have a 0 carb pancake recipe. And when I feel like I want to get more fat in, then I will make those pancakes, and then I will slice up butter, and I will literally come up kind of like a crepe. So it'll be like pancake, butter, pancake, butter, pancake, butter. And it's like, I jokingly call it my butter transport system. And then I'll pour my pancake syrup all over it, my Scrummy Sweets pancake syrup, which is pure allulose. It's only 4 ingredients. And then it's kind of like a complete meal, but it's also delicious and feels very much like I'm cheating, and it's super high protein, so, and high fat.
Yeah. So I say I'm having a cheese sandwich. So my cheese sandwich is a thin slice of cheddar,
Yeah.
slice of butter, and another thin slice of cheddar, and that's my cheese sandwich. So it's got
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah,
That's so English though. It's so funny because like from a palate standpoint, like in the US, I've never put butter on cheese, even though it's an amazing opportunity. But when we stayed in England, that was such a thing. And I was like, so, but it's like, I mean, it's not any weirder than when we eat sausage with, or bacon with a little bit of like maple syrup and or eggs. And they're like, what are you doing? And
yeah.
I'm like, don't judge it till you taste it. Yeah.
So can you get scrummy candies in the UK, or is it only in the US?
Only in the US. I know. And yeah,
Not yet.
yeah. But there will come a point when we'll be able to do where our products will be available more broadly. I have grand plans. So we're definitely planning on not just for ourselves, but also helping other brands. Because here's the thing, it's 2025. People are going to movie theaters, they're going to concerts, they're going to theme parks, they're spending the day out, they're traveling, they're stopping at convenience stores. And at the end of the day, there has to be better options in all of those places, because it's ridiculous that you should make an exception or fall off the wagon just because you're out living life. And even for children, going to birthday parties and school and things like that, the number of unhealthy choices is the overwhelming option. And, as creatures, we want to belong. So if we're there and everybody else is doing it, I'm not saying that everybody else is going to jump on the drug wagon or this or that because of the environment, but the peer pressure and the desire to belong very much exists.
Yeah.
So,
That's part of our
you
DNA.
know, even if you're carnivore and you go to, like, I have my rules. I will eat before I go to a social event that I know is going to be awful, because when I get there,
Yep.
I better be full enough to get through the temptation of like, oh man, I didn't eat. And literally, there's no options here that I would eat. So maybe I start fasting. And if I'm keto adapted, that's easier. If you're not keto adapted, that's harder,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So how can people get hold of your scrummy candies?
Oh, they can go to our website, which is scrummysweets.com. And they can also follow our social media accounts. And I think I gave you my personal blog, which is the 365 Days of Awesome. I have a whole series planned there if you want to learn more about detoxing bodies and wardrobes and your life, and a better way to live so that you can fix your cells and give them the best chance possible so that you live the longest possible with good quality of life. Like that's my wheelhouse.
Yeah. I'll include all the links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Oh, now we're going to ask you for your 3 top tips.
My 3 top tips. First and foremost, if you're in whatever new thing that you're implementing in your life, especially if it's low carb or keto, I really, really firmly believe that you should test so that you know how your body is responding. The other thing about that is, if when you wake up in the morning, if your blood sugar is over 100 or over, what is it, 5.6?
5.5. Yeah.
5.5, 5.6, upon rising, you're not in a, you have a metabolic situation, 100%.
Yeah.
It really shouldn't be over 80, 85 when you wake up in the morning. And if it's much higher than that, pre-diabetes or potentially diabetes. So just know, find out for real and see what you can do to fix it. And that's where testing comes in, which I love. I think it's a great resource and a great way to learn more about what's happening inside. So that was my tip number one. My tip number two is don't be afraid to learn how to craft the best version of you. There are good resources out there. Stay curious. Like, what does that mean? What is that? Let me find out. I think that that leads to a path of great health and also happiness personally.
Yeah.
And then my last tip, practice. Take your vitamin G in the great words of the amazing Benazati, also a dear friend. And I love, I mean, he also shares all the science behind it, which is so great because it really is it. And that vitamin G, which is totally free, by the way, is gratitude. So when you focus on something in your life, I find that wherever you put your focus, you get more of that. So when you look for the joyful moments and you look for the things that make your life better and you appreciate them and you actually practice gratitude every single day, like before bed and in the morning, it's life-changing. It actually is life-changing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are the three.
I agree. I agree. And I have a Fabulously Keto diet and lifestyle journal, which I created. And in fact,
Oh.
people can write in every day, but every day there's a section at the bottom that says gratitude.
Oh, yay. I
So,
love that, Jackie.
yeah.
That's great.
So yeah, I'm definitely a believer of gratitude, and I don't do it all the time, but I write, I've got so many diaries where I've written just 3 things or 5 things a day that I'm grateful for. And
Do
I even
like journal.
created I even created one for my sons. So every
Oh,
day I would write 3 things I was grateful about. Each one, they had their own books. They don't know about it. My sister knows in case anything happens to me to give it to them, but it was something that I'm grateful for every day in those little journals for them.
I mean, I actually think that you should give them
Maybe.
to them before. Uh, I mean, we could deep dive on that conversation later, but I think there's something really important about celebrating and sharing and talking about the things that matter when the people are still here. Uh, and we could definitely have like a whole lengthy conversation about that, I'm sure. But I would give those books, whether you have them reproduced and you give them each a copy for their birthday or some kind of a special holiday. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Because to have them find it afterwards is like it's a missed opportunity for
true.
them to understand how much you mean to them, first of all. And then also, yeah, for
I
what
might
that's worth.
I might show it to them then, and then
I mean,
I'll
I
say one of them.
absolutely would
Because
if I was you.
my son Ben has been decluttering absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Everything is gone, and so it would just go in the bin. So I don't want that. But maybe I.
Oh, yeah, but you could share it with him. I mean, I feel like as a mom, you and I could have like some pretty deep conversations because I have 4 kids, 5 grandchildren. And for me, the most important thing is creating moments and memories. It isn't the material things. I don't care about those anymore at all.
No, me
And
neither.
for Christmas, we gave our kids, I mean, we gave them like some materialistic gifts, but we did something where it was a day in your life, like your story. And it was uh, taking each of the children on a single day and then that they can't do anything else that entire day. And from very first thing in the morning, starting at the house I lived in, the hospital that they were born at, but it's literally a day of journaling through the journey of their life and then sharing the stories that went with that.
Mm.
And and it was so meaningful to the kids because sometimes they have this tough guy and it seems like they don't really, but that's not true. I don't think. I think at the end of the day, they're like, oh my gosh, like well up and this is a beautiful gift. Really? When are we going to do this? So great. So I think they want that too. I think we're all kind of squishy on the inside. That human connection is so deeply rooted.
Yeah. And very easily lost with the children of today.
Yeah. It's
focusing on external stuff like phones and social media and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's kind of by design to keep us not communicating.
Not
We always had like a strict rule with the grandchildren. When they came into the house, there was a little basket for their electronic devices, and they were like, "You're with Oma and Opa today. It's no digital device Sunday." Like we would just have rules. And obviously, when they got older, because my oldest granddaughter's 20, and my oldest grandson's 16, and then we have littles. So it's such an interesting dichotomy. But we've created a pretty good, like, that's always been an ethos in our house, where I'm like, put your phone down, you're with me, like, be with me, be with the kids, be present in the moment. Well, I think from being sick for so long, I had such a hunger for that I absolutely wanted that. So everything has more meaning and more clarity, you know?
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Susie, thank you for being with me today.
Yeah. This was so lovely, Jackie. I feel like you're such a kindred spirit, and I'm so glad you found me. Well, this is going to be a long one for your listeners, but that's fine. They can,
They can listen or not. So if you've
Yeah.
got this far, we're very grateful. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. I very much enjoyed it. It was just like having coffee with a dear friend. And I'm so glad that I found you, Jackie. And I'm sure we'll talk more and I'm sure we'll connect more.
I'm sure too. Thank you for being with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow, what a conversation. And the moment Susie spoke about losing her memory, it really hit me. I teared up when I recorded it, but I also teared up again when I edited the episode. It was such a raw and powerful moment, and a reminder of just how deeply metabolic health can affect every part of our lives. It was a great podcast, and Susie highlighted the many ways that metabolic health can affect our health and our quality of life. So it's really important to tap into our own metabolic health and improving our cells and their function. My friend, Dr. Joanne McManamy, brought me some Scrummy gummy bears, or Switch, I can't even say it, Switch gummy bears, when she came to the UK for the PHC conference. They're good. For me, I'm not really a sweet candy person. I'm more likely to reach for chocolate than I am for sweets. But I see how these can be a game changer for someone who enjoys sweets and wants a metabolically safe option. I don't know what gummy bears are supposed to taste like, but they definitely don't have a funny taste, and they don't leave a strange aftertaste that some other sweeteners can do. Disclaimer. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Our guests, whether healthcare professionals or not, are sharing their personal opinions and experiences. This does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your medications, treatment, or lifestyle, particularly if you're on medication or have concerns about your health.